What's going on, everyone? My name is John. I'm a filmmaker slash creator and your host for Make Limited Podcast, where we talk about how to change our circumstances when life happens. In other words, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Today we'll be talking about the nature of human potential, which will give you insight and strength to reach your potential. Alright, so welcome everyone to Make Limited Podcast. Again, I am your host, John, and today I'm super excited to talk to you today about the nature of humans' potential. And this is so awesome because, and the reason why I wanted to say human, or humans, is because the point of this is not just to focus on a gender, but an overall process of the human potential. And this is what I want to talk about today because there's a long list that we can go on, but I want to just focus on specifically potentials of success. And this is why, because again, it's a very broad topic and I have to narrow this because we can be here for days. So if you are right now heading to your job, if you're heading to your break, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're just going for a walk and you're listening and you're tuning in, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We're so excited to have you here today, listening and just joining in the conversation. It is amazing what this podcast has been going through for this year process. It's been amazing. We've been on Spotify, we've been on Apple Podcasts, we've been on Google Podcasts, we are on Anchor Podcast, where we distribute our podcast. And it's just amazing. So if you want to support us in any way, we have on our Anchor, you can come and visit us and you can support us there as well. Or you can just listen into the small ad that I have in the beginning of every podcast, and that's just to keep us going and keep us running and giving you amazing stories, amazing encouragement, so that you can be the best person that you possibly can in this world. Because we've talked about it before, and we've said the only way to change this world is to reach one person at a time, and that person that you're reaching out to is yourself. And that's the way that you're going to be able to change this world, by changing our perspective, and then we can go and change our world. So today we're talking about the nature of human potential. So with no further ado, let's go and let's talk about this. So for our first point, I want to focus on the word nature. I want you to pay close attention to this word. This word is pretty much the foundation of our human potential. And it is who we are, it is what we do in our lives as human. It is the simple definition is the basic or inherent features of who we are, especially when seen as characteristics. And it's really simple. For example, if you are looking at a problem, excuse me, well, the main focus for you to do when you're trying to fix a problem is to look at what is the root of it. Where did it start from? And this is what nature literally is. It is literally where something began, the basics of it. So when we're looking at the human nature, we're looking at the basic of who we are. What overall makes our human nature, right? Let's start simply through history and how far we've come, right? So according to history, we have come from cave, being in the Stone Age, we've been in the Iron Age, we've been like in the now in like the technology age, right? I just jumped like a huge amount of centuries, but I mean we've been through the metal, iron, like you name it, we've been through all the centuries, gold, when we discover things, even to the point that now we are discovering outer space, and we want to travel outer space. We want to go into the deep and see what's out there. We want to see if there's either, like, if there's any other life, right? That is the human nature of always growing, always wanting to know more, and always moving forward. That has been a beautiful thing about human nature. But the most important part that I want you to understand is that as human natures, we have the capacity to create. Right? This has been our basic. We've have curiosity, right? We have the process of creating things. If you think about, like, if we were in the cave world from to now, so that's a long process, right? But in between that process, we have learned, we have failed, we have succeeded, we have tested things, we have failed tested. I mean, we've done a bunch of things to the point that right now I am talking to you through a mic on a small device here that records and distributes to other people to hear. I mean, that, if you just take a moment to really think about that, it is mind blowing. So, the nature of our human potential is at its best survival and creating and living. I mean, that is pretty much as what we do. We have, and within that whole time, we've learned about ourselves, we've grown. We know already like 16 personalities according to psychology that exist. And I mean, there's another much more, but those are the ones that they consider to be rounded around all humans, right? And we have also zodiacs that people have created so that we can know ourselves a little bit more. I mean, there's so many things that people have tested just to know the human nature, right? If we've seen our potential, we were living in our potential. We're living in houses that back then they didn't even build as great as they do now. I mean, we have AC. One of the man's greatest creation is AC. Can you imagine trying to live without AC? I'm pretty sure that now in today's world we cannot imagine our world without AC. I mean, it's hot outside, and what do? You go inside in the AC, right? What about it's cold? You go inside in the heater in the AC. And so it's just so much potential that has been in us. And in that potential, there has been a lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff that I can go through, and some that I just went through. However, in our nature as humans, we also have what I like to call the curiosity killed the cat. And this is where I come to really to the basic side of understanding as human nature, we have two sides. And this is why I really want to talk about this, because we have two sides, and that two sides is really simple. Black and white is good and evil. That's how simple I can put it. We have two sides. We have two natures. We have good nature, you have a bad nature, a positive nature, and a negative nature. So whatever I can say about good, it also has happened in the bad. There has been times in history that things that were created for the human was also created for evil. And that is something that we have to keep in mind, because I used to think like this, and I still do, that I believe that every person has good in them. But also every person that I've come to understand has evil inside of them. And it doesn't matter how good we try to be, that is there. The opportunity, the choice that we have in our human world to do bad. And it can happen in a blink of an eye that we can choose that. And that is the human nature. It's just who we are. There's no going about it. So if you see somebody in the news do something, and this is one of the things, in a way, it's kind of like my pet peeve, because, I understand the concept of good and evil. And when I see somebody do something bad, I know that they could also do something good. And I also understand that just because we're the person who's watching it and not the person who committed the action or the act, doesn't mean that we cannot as well do that. Because we are humans, we are in the same world. As bad as you see someone get, know that as bad as we can get. As good as you see someone get, that's how good we can actually be. We choose where we stand in our world. We choose where we belong. We choose where to live. And this is our great opportunities, great things through our human world that we've created. And in order to function in this world, we've actually created I call it in more simple terms, a level of living. So we have the first level, which is our lower class. Then we have our middle level, which is our middle class, in which we have our high level, which is our, royal class. But of course, in between those classes, we have actually created more categories that define more precisely middle class and lower class and higher class, right? We have the rich, 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 rich. Then we have the rich. Then we have the not so rich. And then we move into the middle class. And of course, there are many other names that are called, but I'm just trying to give it in a very understandable, simple way that can be comprehended. Very simple. Sometimes the simplest things are the best way to really go about to understand a concept. And so, in this human nature that we live in, no one is excluded from doing something good, and no one's excluded from doing something bad. That is our human nature. And that's what I want us to understand first in this point, before I move to point 2 and point 3. Our human nature goes any direction that we please. And it's so interesting, right? We're talking about how we've created these different levels of how people are rated according to what they have and materials that they own and properties and money and all these things, right? We've made rules, we've made guidelines, we have laws. We've created this, how can I say, we've created this pyramid that defines us as humans. In every culture, there is always an alpha. In every culture or society, there's always a dominance. And there's always someone who's going to be a passive, and it's going to be a person who follows. You have a leader, you have a follower. And we've created that since the beginning. We started with, somebody leading us, having a leader in the culture or the small society that it started from, until we got to the point that we needed laws, we needed rules to really be able to manage this community so that everybody could eat, so people could be managed, so that we know how to deal with things that we that are unexpected, and how to reward people for doing great things. So we created a kingdomship where one person rules, and there are the wealthiest in the country. And it started with the wealthiest in the society or culture, and that's how they went on ruling. And from there, it created royalty people, and from royalty, it started going into dividing and conquering, and so on and so forth, until we're now in democracy, where we have a president in the United States, of course. And and it's not the same in all countries. It's not. There's different things and different ways that they run it. But of course, in the United States democracy, we have a president. But that president is not run just by itself and make the decisions. It still has 3 branches that it has to go by, and each of those branches have to agree, or 2 to 3, 2 to 1 have to be the vote for the majority. And so there's so much that happens that as our human nature we have created to run a system that we best agree with, that is fair for everyone. And of course, it's not going to please everyone. Even though we have democracy that we believe is like the best thing that we've done, in my opinion, it doesn't matter what we call it. We're still living in a place of kingship where someone is the head, and then everybody follows after. But we try to put more rules and more things. It is in our human nature to do good or to do evil. Black and white. And so, as we get further in this human potential and what our potential is in our human world, we first have to understand what we're capable of as humans. We're capable of doing really good stuff, and we're capable of doing really bad stuff. And that is our first point that I want to talk about. And now we're going to go into our second point now that we understand a little bit more about the human nature. What is the basic of it? There's beautiful things in our human nature. Beautiful things we've created, we've invented stuff, we've gathered together to celebrate great things, we've conquered so that we could do great things for our countries and freedom. And so we fight for these things because in our human nature we believe that every person deserves to be free, and no one deserves to be under a ruleship or somebody ruling them, or in other words, being a slave to things, right? And so in our human nature we have built so many things, and everything has come down to it's either good or it's either bad. And so we have that potential. And that's why it's really important, and I keep repeating this because I want you to just understand that even though you believe that you're 100% good, know that you can do 100% bad. But you choose to do good. And that is the powerful thing that we have, choice, which we're going into next. Alright, point number 2 is choice. The beautiful thing about choice is that you have a decision to do, the free will to choose what you want to be, what do you want to do, what do you want to become. I mean, we have this free will that we're able to do it. And with that comes, I believe, a responsibility. And I don't know if you've heard this, but my first time that I heard this quote was in Spider-Man, right? And it's, with great power comes great responsibility. And I believe that freedom is not something as humans and our potential that we take lightly, and that we take as something that we can do whatever we want. Right? I think that freedom is power that we have. And with that power comes responsibility. So freedom for me is responsibility. That's what I believe it comes down to when we become as a free person. And that is in our human nature, because we have this potential to either be stuck in and disappointment, stuck in disapproval, stuck in the way we think about ourselves, stuck in a place that we don't want to be. And when we get out of those places, we have the freedom to do the opposite with others and with ourselves. And sometimes that freedom is given and we take it for granted and we decide to do whatever we want. And sometimes that freedom is taken the opposite way, and we are actually, instead of freeing ourselves and freeing others, we tend to entangle others and capture them. And now we have become the opposite of what we were. Instead of being free, we actually become free and enslave others. So, as a human potential, we have that possibility to choose. What are you choosing today is my question. What are you choosing? Do you have the opportunity to choose good, or you have the opportunity to choose bad? And that is a responsibility, as a freedom that we have, as the choice that it gives us that freedom, and that freedom gives us that responsibility. That responsibility is a responsibility, first of all, to ourselves. The responsibility to take care of ourselves. The responsibility to look after ourselves, to love ourselves, and to care for ourselves. It's very important that we do that. Why? Because this is what happens within ourselves. If we come and look after ourselves and we take care of ourselves, we discover within ourselves things that we never thought we could be. We have, as humans, the potential to be great. We have the potential to do great things. And that choice comes between we choose to look within ourselves, or we choose to look at the world for that, and let the world choose for us who we are. And that is very dangerous when it comes to self-discovery. That is very dangerous when it comes to knowing who you are. Because you don't know exactly who you are, but you only know yourself as the world knows you. And this is one thing that I've talked in my podcast before. Even if you go to Zodiacs, even if you go to the internet and take the 16 personality tests for psychology, even if you take all these tests and you come out as this person, right? It gives you a character. It gives you somebody, or you go ask your cousin, or you go ask your relatives, right? Your friends, your teachers, your educationers. If you go ask all these people, they're going to give you someone who you show them, right? And each one of them is either going to give you a different question, a different answer, or you can have a similar answer with some. Because in certain areas, wherever you were brought up to think a certain way. And through that way, it's how you're going to look at leadership. It's how you're going to act in front of leadership or in front of people who may be important, and how you treat others who may not be, or will be treated less from where you come from. So we have this choice within ourselves to look at the world to tell us who we are, or self-discovery. We find out who we are, and we believe that with all our hearts. So again, we have the choice, bad or good. Do we choose to look at our lives all in good, or to look at our lives all in bad? Right? Some of you may agree of the fact that you have to be balanced, right? You got to know your bad and you got to know your good side, because you got to be balanced. You got to know those things to live in this world. And I agree with that. But my main agreement lies in the path of whatever is negative turn into a positive. Why is that important? And why do I lie in that belief? And I believe that with all my heart. It's because, say you see something inside of you that is negative, right? What do? Do you just be aware that you have a negative side? Or do you actually see how you can use that for good? That's what I've learned in my life process. And I've learned this through the Bible. When you turn evil for good, when somebody's meant to do evil to you, you turn it into good. And it reminds me of this scripture that it talks about, where when it says, you, no matter what you're doing and all that you do good. Because when it comes to people talk about you, that even your enemies will have nothing bad to say, just good. That is powerful in itself. Extremely powerful. And this is why I want to talk about choice, because in our human nature of potential, we have the basics that we need. And you know where the basics come from? Within ourselves. You think if the beginning, if let's say, for example, cave people would have let the world tell them who they are, would we really exist? Yes, we could argue that it was the world that told us, what's good and what's bad, right? But what if when we were cavemen, what if we had the world or nature actually speak, right? What if they spoke negative stuff to us? We would have existed. No, we lived on hope. We lived on survival. We lived on love. Things that made us keep going, to live another day, for hope, for our families, for our kids, to better our lives. That's what we've been as humans living for. That's what you work for. That's what you go to school for. That's what you wake up every day to live, to survive, to create a better world for yourself. And in turn, creating that better world, you believe that it's going to create a better world for your family, for yourself mainly, and for those around you. And that's why it's so important that I believe that it is not from other voices that you will know who you are, but is through your own self-discovery of who you are. Loving the good that you have, and then using the bad and turning it into good. That's what we do. That's the choice that we have. There's one thing that in the Bible says when, and this is, I hope it is not out of context. I mean, you don't understand this out of context, and I'm just using this as an example where God tells his people, choose life. You have an option of choosing life or death. Choose life. Tells them to choose life. Why? Because it's better to live than to die. It's better to be alive than not to move at all. Than to be 6 feet underground. It's better to live. And this is why I believe the choice is important. As our human nature and the basics of who we are, we have the potential to do good and bad. And that choice is up to us, which in turn gives us the freedom that we need in our lives. And that freedom doesn't come lightly. It comes with a responsibility. A responsibility for us to look after ourselves. A responsibility that we know that we are in good shape so that we can help others. So that we can, in turn, teach others. And that's why Make Limited is so powerful, because we go through situations in our lives and we want to teach others how we've gone through it, what we went through, what are the things that are super important for us, and how do we overcome it? How do we live on a daily basis, with choices in our lives? Millions of choices in our lives. Every day we wake up and we have a choice to do something. And we choose. That's why I say, do not take freedom lightly. Take it as a responsibility to our human society to be better. And in part 3, we're going to be talking about potential. And in part 2, we talked about choice, how choice is important. But now let's go into part 3, which I'm super excited to talk to you about, which is going to be about potential. Point 3, potential. Potential. I am super excited to talk to you about potential. And we went through it a little bit on point 2. But potential for me is one of the most important things as humans that has carried us in our life, in our history, and everywhere that we go. Potential has been one of the biggest things that we have explored and been a part of, and it has taken us to a place of growth, and that is so amazing. And let me just give you a little definition on potential. Okay, potential means having or showing the capacity to become or develop into something in the future. And this is the beautiful thing, that why we do what we do as humans, right? And the human nature of the nature of humans' potential. This is what brings us from our nature to the choices and the potential that our choices give us. We do things because we believe that it's going to give us a better tomorrow. And I love it because I don't know if you've seen the movie Crew, the new one that just came out. It's so amazing how through the first movie that they made from the Croods, and Croods is an animation story that was made, and it's a very, very awesome movie. It's an animation Very powerful though, and the concept of what they're talking about, and it's literally like we just mentioned about cave people. So if you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's really awesome, and the story, how the story takes place, and how it's all narrated and makes sense. It's really powerful. So in the beginning, they're trying to reach tomorrow, and then tomorrow is a place for them that takes them to hope and takes them to a place of just being safe and better. And on the second movie, they find tomorrow, which is a place that helps them grow as humans into a better society, into actually being people who come together in a group and build places like farms and crops, and they start growing their own food, right? And so in this, they move from a level of being stuck in a cage to now having houses or places to live and sleep in, and now they don't have to hunt for their food. Now they are just in one place, and they are now growing their food. So there's no more hunting. There's no more, have to, every day survive. Now they are living in a safe place that they know they have a future. And through this whole movie, they have choices, and you see their human nature. They're hungry. They're adventurous. They're scared. They want to move forward, and they've seen what other people have gone through, and their wisdom has grown into protecting their family and to being safe and taking the right precautions to live and keep going, just to live the next day and be able to survive this world that they're in. And so throughout this whole process, you see them going through exactly what we're talking about today. You see their human nature, you see their choices that they make, and now you see the potential that their choices have given them. And this is why I believe so much in potential. Something that we look forward to. And the possibilities, it's just so amazing when you think about something. You think about your dream, you think about your hopes, you think about this new job that you got, or you think about, if you start a business, you think about if you go to school, if I just go here, or if I just do this, if I just have that, the possibilities. And that is potential. That is what potential is. But potential does not come from a thing that you do. Potential doesn't come from, if I have the money, I'll be able to do it. That's not potential. And this is something that I've learned in my life. And when a simple concept, I mean simple concept. And you're gonna hear me talk about simple concepts all the time, because I believe there's nothing better than to understand a simple concept. It As you grow and as you learn, it starts to get a little bit more complicated. But the simpler you get something, the more you understand. And that is the whole thing that I try to do when I learn something that is complex. I try to make it simple. I try to put it into a place that I can understand it, and then apply it, understand it, apply it, understand it, and to the point that it becomes a secondhand thing and I understand it. That is my process. So when you see this part of potential, it does not come from things that you have. Just because you're believing that if you just have $1 million, you're going to be a better person, happier person. No, that is not true. And I've learned this, again, through a very simple process. You see, as a filmmaker, it's very, very challenging to look at every single year there's a new technology, a product coming out. Apple, every year, September, new phones. And now every other phone company is doing the same thing. Every year, the one thing that I would notice this is every year they would come with a new car. And the beautiful thing about this, and let me just go a little bit off track here, is, you see, one of my mentors, who is no longer here, and he's resting, God bless his soul, is Dr. Miles Monroe. Now, if you haven't heard Dr. Miles Monroe, you can go on YouTube and check him out. This is one of my mentors where I listen. I really focus on what he says because I agree with it, and it's something that I base and live my life off. And so, um, one of the insights that he gave us was he had a friend who owned a car company, and I don't remember what car company he owned, but I remember that the person took him to the factory, and as he was walking to the factory, there were signs in these rooms that said the years, but this weren't recent years, this weren't past years, these were future years. And in each of this room, they had a year. Let's say, for example, they had 2000, and it was the year, let's say, 1998, and they had 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2003, and so on and so forth. And he asked them, what are those rooms for? Why do they have those numbers? And he told them, whoa, those are the cars that we're working on for the future. And he was so astonished that so you're working on cars that are years in advance for the years to come. And yes, that's what they were doing. They were working towards vehicles that in the future would be advanced. And the reason I'm talking about this is I'm talking about every year as a filmmaker is so challenging to keep up with this technology and think that you need this technology. You need to buy new things because if you get this camera, I mean, your skill is going to be better. Your film is going to look better. And what I've come to the realization that I've stayed with one of my cameras that I've gotten since the beginning, and it challenges me when I don't have the capability of getting like a 12K pixel on my footage and to get the best quality of sound. And I stuck to this basic. Why? Because it has really given me the potential to grow and look at things from a different perspective. Now, technology and advance is a different point, and I'm not trying to focus on that point. I'm trying to give you an example of how every year there's a new thing, right? And later on I'll get to that point. But first, I'm talking about ourselves, us. Remember, you can't compare yourself as an individual to a company, right? And company, like a certain vehicle or brand, they have been there for years, right? And they have cars and cars coming out every year because of the system they created. You understand? Versus an individual does not have a company, does not have something that they are advanced in years, right? This is something that you have to start from within, okay? In order to be maneuvering yourself or managing yourself like this company, you have to first work on yourself. Okay, so first we got to understand that part. Secondly, we got to see within ourselves. What is it within ourselves? Who are we within ourselves, right? We talked about it in point 2. Are we letting the world tell us who we are, or are we discovering that for ourselves, right? Because the potential that we think we see in someone else is not really in them. The potential is in us. See, what your heart desires and what you truly need is in all the tools in your life is in you. To be a great man, to be a great woman, to be a great human is in you. In the nature, the basic, everything is in us to reach our potential, to reach everything that we need in our lives is in us. So many times we look outside for inspiration, and so many times we look outside for all these things that will inspire us. But in reality, you can look at so many speeches, you can look at so many things, but in reality, it comes from within us that we have to go and really push ourselves. Going back to my film story, I used to think that if I would have got a better equipment, I would be a better filmmaker. And you and a great example for this, as I continue the story, is Spider-Man, right? If you haven't seen the movie Spider-Man, this is a spoiler, but I watch a lot of movies, okay? So that's why I'm referring to this. Spider-Man, it's a great lesson. Um, and then a side note here, it the greatest way to really come about a movie when you're presenting it to an investor or presenting it to people who want to invest in your movie is to just really cut it to a short. And what I mean with that is this: either one sentence or one word. The movie is about hope. The movie is about love. The movie is about, you know, a lost hero who is willing to go through the trouble of self discovery and sees that his potential is within himself and not from the outside. Very simple. Simple sentence. That's the best way that you can actually go into an investor and really talk to them and tell them that. That really tells a story. And they themselves will ask questions of what they want to know a little bit more of. But if you have those two lines, the interest, the hit, and grab their attention, they will automatically want to invest in it if they're interested, right? Okay, so now going back into the equipment, sometimes we think that the equipment that we so long for is going to make us that better person, right? As we said, for examples, if $1 million is going to make you that better person, if you do this, you're just going to be able to have your family in a better place. One of the things that I've come to realize is that equipment, material things, money does not make you better. Money does solve problems. I can tell you that much. Money does solve problems. That's literally what it's for. But does it make you happy? No, it doesn't. I've heard so many people say money makes you happier, you can't say that money doesn't make you happy. I've heard this so many times, and in those so many times, I have seen them fall into destruction because they make money their priority, and that is not a sustainable thing. Money comes and goes. That's why you work. That's why you have to do things so that you can get that money, because it comes and it goes. So where does our inspiration come from? Where does our motivation? Where does our potential? How do we reach it? And it's within us. Everything that you need to reach your potential, your full potential, is within you. You have the possibility, the capability, the opportunity, the gifts inside you, but you need to bring them out. You need to go and find out what are those gifts, what are those talents, what are you really good at, what do you do, what do you like, what do you love to do? Because I've said it again and I said it many times. We are given the opportunity as humans in this world to do what we want and live a happy life. That's an opportunity. It's a choice that we have. And again, like I've said, like we've gone through our human nature, potential, the nature of the human potential, the nature, who we are. We have bad and we have good. And then it comes into choice. With that freedom, it becomes a responsibility, not something that we take lightly. And from that choice, we have potential. What does that potential come from? Within us. We decide every day to wake up early. We decide every day to go to work. We decide every day to make goals. We decide every day to plan our lives. We decide every day to invest, to save money, or we decide every day to waste it, to spend it, to not care, to really live a life that doesn't matter. As long as we, can do what we want on the weekends, we'll be fine. But there's so much more to life. There's so much more that we can do to improve and reach our full potential. And if you measure yourself in a scale from 1 through 100, some of us are just doing 25% of our lives, of our potential. And we still have 75% potential in our lives. Now, would this be easy? No. This definitely won't be easy. But I'll tell you what, It is worth it. And I'll tell you again the story that I love so much. And I'll end with this. The story of a person who found a treasure in a land. And he sold everything he had and bought that land. Because for him, that treasure was everything. It was worth everything that he had. It was going to take him to a full potential in his life. So again, find what is worth for you and go on the full way so that you can find your full potential and reach it. And no, it's not going to be easy. It's never easy. No matter what you do in this life, whether you choose to work, whether you choose to get a business, whether you choose to, travel or become something, everything has a process, and that process has its own challenges. So, remember, your full potential is in you. Alright, everyone, so we have reached the end of our podcast. It was so amazing, and I'm so glad that I wanted to share this with you, because I believe it's something that we need to hear. It's something that in our lives, it would help us find our potential. It would help us move forward as humanity, as together, because we are better together than we are separate. And it is something that I believe will take us further when we do things together. So, we talked about today the nature of human potential. We talked about the beginning to understand the human potential. We talked about the nature. And in the nature, we understood that there is good and there is evil. And it's inside of each and every one of us. We have the potential, we have the capability to do good or to do bad. The choices are up to us. And then we moved on to point 2, and we talked about choice and how that choice created the freedom that we had. It's a freedom that we have to choose what we do every day. But again, that freedom does not come just to take it lightly and do whatever we want with it. That freedom comes with responsibility, right? First, responsibility to ourselves, and then responsibility to those who are around us. And then third, we talked about potential, the beauty of potential, the possibility through our choices that a potential has. And that is what we talked about today, and how far potential can take you. But remember, the potential does not come from others. Okay? Inspiration, motivation, those are great things to have. But you're not going to be able to move because you're listening to other people. You're going to be able to move because you yourself, in yourself, are moving. And only you can do that. Only you can find your full potential. So that is what we talked about today. The nature of human potential. You have the potential to do great things. You have the potential to reach your dreams and your hopes. You have it. It's in you. You have all the tools that you need inside yourself. In you. Remember that. And I'll leave you with that. This is your host, John, with Make Living Podcast, and we see you next time, guys.